Hi, welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, I'm a film programmer and cultural critic in Toronto, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Tracie Laymon, the writer and director of Bob Trevino Likes It, an absolutely lovely little film about a young woman who tries reaching out to her father on Facebook after he cuts her out of his life, and finds another Robert Trevino instead, a guy about the same age who responds to her with an earnestness and compassion she never got from her actual dad. With exquisite performances from Barbie Ferreira and John Leguizamo, and a story that never quite goes where you think it will, even though it's based on events in Tracie's own life, Bob Trevino Likes It won the Audience Award and the Jury Prize at last year's South by Southwest Festival, and is in theaters across the US and Canada right now. Please see it with a crowd. It's really something. And Tracie picked Edward Scissorhands, Tim Burton's 1990 fantasy starring Johnny Depp as an artificial man with scissors for hands, and Winona Ryder as the young woman who shows him what humanity looks and feels like when he finds his way into her suburban cul-de-sac. Filled with splendid images, unexpected laughs, and an almost shocking level of honesty from a surrealist like Burton, it's a beautiful little picture that feels even more precious for being the film he chose to make after the massive success of Batman. He could have done anything. He told a love story. This is Someone Else's Movie.
Well, it meant so much to me, and I hadn't seen it in a while. And when they said, "Well, which movie would you like to do?" I immediately said this one, but I actually had to watch it again to realize how deeply connected to this film I am, and how it kind of permeates everything I'm trying. It's an example of everything I'm almost trying to do now, you know. So it's instinctively I said this, having loved this film and not seen it in a while, and rewatching it for this interview, it just was more and more obvious where so much of, how much it inspired me, as a young person.
Well, you are a little younger than I am. I saw it theatrically. I was 1990. I would have been 22. Did you see it theatrically first? Did you catch up to it later?
I saw it. I think my older brother or sister either had a VHS tape or was watching it maybe on cable or something. And you'd think that at a young age you'd need to be in a theater to pay attention, but I remember everything in the room disappearing, and all I could see and hear was this film on the TV. And so I've gone back and seen it in the theater, as an adult. But I was just a young person watching it on TV and found it life-changing. I could relate so much. So I think I rarely felt so connected to a character, even though he's, obviously we don't look the same.
There is something, I don't know that it's the best film Burton ever made, but it's the purest, I think. Like it's the one that is most him.
I think so too. And I think I heard I heard that he doesn't think it's his greatest film, but it's his favorite of his films.
I can see that.
Yeah.
When he makes a movie with his whole heart, I think like there's some, I think I might be the only person, but I deeply love the feature-length version of Frankenweenie because it is like it's so pure. It's the film from a child's imagination that he's always been trying to make, and just the choice to follow, Pee-wee, Beetlejuice, and Batman with something that has no irony in it and has nothing but like alienation and loneliness and sadness, and somehow to take that sort of, I've never known how to describe it, but it's not gothy, but it's macabre. Like the thing he does as a director, or did in the 80s and 90s before it turned into, Stripes all the way down. His ability to create a character who instantly is an outsider and is comfortable with it or resigned to it, like one or the other. Those are the things that are the most fascinating about Lydia Dietz in Beetlejuice, or Pee-wee himself in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Certainly Batman is all about freaks and weirdos, and it isn't until Batman Returns that he really gets to dig into it and get his right up to the elbows in it. But Edward Scissorhands is the mirror image of all of that, because it is just so sweet and sad. And while there is violence and there is a macabre element, it's just not that movie. It's a film from the perspective of a teenager scribbling in a notebook, angry that no one will read the whole story, like this epic graphic novel he's composing. It might not be good exactly, but he's going to make people understand. And then you see this made by an adult version of that kid. Like, that's the thing. It channels the teenage intensity and angst at exactly the right level to let you know that the person making this is looking back. I mean, I think that's the beauty of the flashback structure.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also just this beautiful, heartbreaking understanding that some part of you will always be that sad teenager working forever to connect and never quite making it. It just breaks my heart.
Yet when you see it as an adult, you see all these new layers to it, right? Like when
Mm-hmm.
I saw it as a kid, I just felt, oh, no one understands him and he's different and but he has a good heart. And if they could just see, so many layers to that. Even we should go into this is I could go into more depth of this, but even his ability to only receive praise when he's doing something, like, oh, I'm gonna create these magical things and then you'll like me, and when looking back at it now, I probably hadn't seen it in over 10 years until this week, until the last couple of days, um, seeing more of the critique on society and how we view people like that. Like I didn't see that as a kid. I just felt connected to Edward, and had that hope and the magic, and so it's interesting. It's just interesting how you relate to things differently, and you see both sides later.
Yeah, I mean the cookie cutter suburbia, the fact that everything
Yeah.
is a little stagey and a little
Mm.
stretched is simultaneously just what Tim Burton does,
Yeah.
but also now, I guess, in the rear view, especially since David Lynch just died, like I felt that this is his reaction to Blue Velvet, like
Yeah.
that there is no corruption in society or in suburbia specifically that isn't already there. That, like, it doesn't. There is no Frank. There's no horrible influence that comes in. The thing they're all scared of is actually the nicest person in the world,
Yeah.
except for the control issues.
Yeah. Absolutely. And they the way they turn on him. I mean, it's interesting because I was almost overwhelmed with how much more I was seeing in it now, the dad is the idea that money is everything, the dad, they're like, oh, now you've made it, now you can get a job, now you can get a loan, now you can go be so successful, and he just wants to exist and be seen and loved, and he doesn't, they're all putting the in it, and then the women seeing the value in him when he can do their hair or cut their dog's hair or do these sculptures, and yeah, it's just the critique of how we deem people valuable. you know
Mhm.
like they're not he's valuable just for existing, but they they see that only in their own from their own perspective.
Yeah, valuable and desirable, which is the other
Yeah.
thing that's I think perfectly suited to Burton's development at that point as a filmmaker. Like, he's never been comfortable with sex or romance is fine as long as it's, Pee-wee, as long as it's
Yeah,
it's it's
yeah.
it's chaste. I mean, Batman Returns, I think, is might actually be his best film because he is so uncomfortable with what he's doing with Michelle Pfeiffer, with what the film is doing and what he has to do as a
Yeah.
director to tell that story. But the just the fact that Kathy Baker's character tries to seduce Edward and just doesn't know how to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like that, I think that feels like, again, a teenager's idea of how grown-ups work and
Yeah.
what they try to do and the masks that they're putting on versus the purity of Kim's romance with him. The fact that there may be desire, but it's irrelevant. It's about just being able to touch each other and connect on that level like intimacy for this film is really just a hug.
Yeah. And the emotional connection, and
Yes.
I think we you know I I think what resonates so much with from Edward Scissorhands, and I tried to put it in Bob Trevino, and then I hopefully have it in my other stories too, is remembering how magical that the small things in human connection are, whether it's connecting with someone online, how that can be magical, or having someone give you a hug. I mean, that hug in Edward Scissorhands, like she says, hold me or something. He says, I can't. Then she shows him how. She shows him how to hold her, just with his own challenges, and that's so palpable. That's so much more palpable than even a kiss would have been, So I think I'm a big fan of making the quote mundane monumental, and finding the awe in everyday things, because there is magic in there's magic right now in this room. There's magic that you and I are talking on here. There's magic everywhere, and we just have to look. And I think this film does that so well. When they're driving in the beginning, when they're driving and he's looking at kids playing and somebody watering their lawn, I think, and you see it through his kind of perspective, and you realize how it is magical. Who are these people? What are they doing? And I just want to that childlike awe, that innocent and that innocence. If we get that back a little bit, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, there is some and I'm thinking now, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, because it's not irony poisoning exactly. I think we need irony and cynicism to survive as humans in
Yeah.
the present day, that we've in the world that we've built for ourselves, where communication is layered and fraught, and all of the things that, I mean, even in, well, everybody assumes the worst of Edward because he looks like
Yeah.
he does look like the monster from another movie, obviously. That's the point of it. He just isn't one.
Mhm.
um but in the same way that Bob Trevino can imagine a relationship between a man in his 60s and a woman in her 20s that is a relationship without any tension, that it's going to go wrong or weird, or that somebody's going to be a creep. You just quickly establish that that's not who these people are, but they don't know that. So watching them come together is just, and support each other and actually be each other's family, is just such a lovely, lovely thing that can happen only if the audience is willing to believe that that's still possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And we run into our own cynicism too. There are people, they fold their arms and then they slowly unfold their arms. You know, they think, oh, this could never happen. And then they see that it's inspired, it's not based on, but it's inspired by a very, very true friendship. So my film. So I think, it's just trying to remind people. It's like you'd like to think with these stories, you think, oh, that's the type of world we could live in. That's the type, one day, maybe we could one day. And I was like, no, we do. We do live in this world. Like, we just have to pay attention to these things. We do live in a world where you can be kind to someone, they can be kind to you, and you can have a ripple effect, a positive ripple effect that changes each other. It changes your community, So I want to see and make movies like this that just make you believe again, that make you believe that we can have this impact. Although there is a kind of pretty underlying cynicism throughout Edward Scissorhands, like in a critique, like I said, for example, just the way people treat people who are different, that oh gosh, like the way they say, I remember the TV station, they say, if you didn't have hands like that, you wouldn't be special, and to me that's a little bit like the way people treat the disabled community, like, oh, okay, well, don't you want to be like everybody else? We'll try to make you like everybody else, but if you are like everybody else, you won't be special. But people are special just for being who they are. It's not because they have some, super ability or a difference. So anyway, I saw so much of it, and I saw a critique of the way people can't avoid their own point of views when looking to help others too. So when they take them to the bank, and they're like, oh, it'll be easy for you. You'll get a loan. It'll be great. And then they get there and he has no credit score, and yet that guy, the banker, is like, oh, great. You can get a disability placard. You're going to be great. It's easy for you. And I'm like, none of you are paying any attention to what he's actually experiencing or going through, what his actual life experiences. Or sorry, I just watched it, so I have all these details, but
No, it's fine.
yeah, I think he's the doctor that's like the witness at the courthouse. And he says, oh, he's been isolated for all these decades, and he's going to have all these challenges, and he's severely ill-equipped, and all, but he's imaginative. And the bailiff or whatever says, but he's going to be okay, right? He's like, yeah. So I'm like, no one. And then the bailiff even says, I'll be up all night, so just take care of yourself. Like, if I worry about you, I'll be up all night, so just take care of yourself. And the passing the buck of real genuine care, or taking any action to make sure this human, and to me that reminded people that come out of prison after, incarcerated folks who get out of prison after 20, 30 years and don't have community, and they're saying, oh, you need you need to be reintegrated in a way, and you need support and community. But people are like, oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Like, so it just, I didn't see these things when I was younger. I didn't see all of these analogies to these communities and the way we treat people. I just saw that I was different, and I just saw that side.
Yeah, and the question in Edward Scissorhands that never gets asked is, what do you want? Right?
Yeah.
Like they're just assuming he wants the same thing as everybody else. And
Yeah.
I guess he does. He wants to be seen. He wants to be loved. He wants to understand any of it.
Yeah.
But I wonder, the things you were describing, I wonder if that in the script wasn't some kind of reflexive defense in order to make us feel like Edward is human. And thus, like that, thus everybody wants everything for him that they would want for themselves. They want him to be okay. They want him to be fine. And they're framing it all through their, as you say, through their perspectives. But he's not, which is the thing that never comes up in the film, which I absolutely love. It isn't until the very end of the film that you understand, like, he doesn't even age. Nobody understands. He is a person.
Yeah.
The fact that he is not a human being, he is a creation, an automaton. It doesn't mean he doesn't have humanity. I certainly don't want to suggest that, but there is this huge gap that he is effectively alien to them.
Yeah.
And dropping him into the middle of suburbia just because his inventor has died, they don't even understand that. He can't communicate it. And in a weird way, it feels like it's the thing that happens in E.T. that doesn't happen here, which is that only the kids embrace the alien. They rally around him, they gather around him. Adults don't get to interact with him at all, and it's a secret. Here, it's the version where everybody sees him and decides that he needs a suit. Like it doesn't, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
The suspenders, oh my God. They're amazing.
Yeah, but it's just like this straight line into the absurdity of the situation, but also how deeply human it feels and how real that impulse is.
Well, and also this desire to we do this with, I mean, you look at how many different groups of minorities that we do this to, or marginalized folks of that we are like, wow, there's this awe, but then we say, oh, but now you need to be like us, Okay, wow, that's fascinating, but now you need to wear suspenders, and we need to talk about having surgery to give you hands, and we need to make your makeup, you put your makeup and make it like us, and it's for your best interest that you be like us, and then taking away the very thing that made them special in the first place, that was just being themselves. So I found so many layers of that rewatching it, and his ability to play along and go along because he doesn't quite know himself yet. He's kind of like a child. And so he's trying on these things, and he's doing, and I looked, you remember when he wakes up, and I mean, we see that bed and it's got all the hay or straw and everything. And it's almost like his wall is like a vision board, and I noticed this time that there's a little piece of paper that says self-conscious. And I thought, wow, he wants to be self-conscious, because if you're self-conscious, then you're human. Like, and so even when you look at how he looked the first time he may see himself in the mirror in her bedroom, he doesn't have any kind of reaction to himself. He's just kind of like, he doesn't even see himself. And so, at least it appears that way. So it's this desire to, like, we would think, oh, I don't want to be self-conscious, but like, that's his goal, is just to have that. I find that fascinating. And like, I think that the Latin quote, that translates to, I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am actually starts with, I doubt, therefore I think, therefore I am. I tell my students, I used to teach filmmaking, and I would say, don't worry if you're insecure, you have doubts, because there's another part to that, it's, if you doubt, then you think, then that means you are, so it's your doubt that makes you have faith. It's your doubt that makes you believe, and that believing, that overcoming that and believing is what makes you human. And so I found it very interesting that was something he appeared to aspire to, that I never noticed before.
Yeah, I don't trust people who don't doubt themselves.
I doubt myself all the time.
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week, I wrote about the final seasons of Star Trek Lower Decks and Star Trek Prodigy, and the 4K release of Galaxy Quest, and Severin Films' new 4K editions of Antiviral and Delicatessen, because dystopias never go out of style. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io, or find a link at the Semcast Blue Sky account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. That does give Burton the license to have a character like Jim, like Anthony Michael Hall, who like cast against type, which is really smart, right?
Yeah, it's so smart. He almost gives like when I was rewatching, I was like, it's kind of like Biff and Back to the Future or something. Yeah. like this feels like a John Hughes meets Tim Burton kind of character, and yeah, wow, really different. And he had been because I was like, oh wait, Weird Science and Oingo Boingo, and I went down a rabbit hole with that, and but yeah, how interesting. I wondered how that. I just wondered how that happened. Who thought of that? Who thought of casting him, or how that happened? I don't know if it came through Weird Science or what. I don't know.
Well, Breakfast Club. He was the John Hughes.
Yeah.
I think he's the only actor who's in all three of them, if that's right. 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, and Weird Science, and he's bulked up. He doesn't quite look like himself. I mean, I saw it in 1990, and half the crowd did not recognize him at the screening. Like there were these weird 2 scenes, 3 scenes in, people would be like, "Oh, is that?" And you'd hear it.
Yeah.
And having him play someone who is presented as the ideal, right? This is what you get if you do everything you're supposed to do and assimilate or own this identity from the beginning. And he's awful. Like he is having a great time being a villain, because I'm clearly he never had the shot to do that before, and he's really enjoying it. But there is this bully reflection, Biff Tannen kind of thing, exactly what you said. Like he is just, apparently it was very divisive that he's killed, but it kind of has to happen. I mean, he brings it on himself. That's the whole point. His arrogance leads to his death, and destroys everything, because that's who this kid is. He's going to wreck everything. If he's allowed to have his way, it just means everyone else around him is unhappy.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens, even though he doesn't get to enjoy them being unhappy. But casting Anthony Michael Hall just gives it this electric charge of weirdness. Somebody who had been bullied in every movie he made to that point, suddenly now is the villain.
Yeah.
And I still like watching it again. It was really unsettling. I'd love to talk to him about it someday. Just like, how do you even start into that character? Did he know they always say the best villains don't think they're villains.
Yeah.
They just have like, no one's listening to me and I don't know why. It just makes me angry. But that's exactly the note he plays, right? Like he cannot understand why people don't share his point of view. And it's simply because he doesn't listen.
Not at all.
And it poisons everything.
Yeah, it's so, looking back, it's so interesting. Like, and he French Stewart in Bob Trevino was kind of similar in a way, because he people aren't used to seeing him that way, and we tried not to, for people who haven't seen the film yet, he's the father that's abandoning and not kind, to say the least. I'm being kind here by saying that, but he's very, very, very unkind. And we would, French and I would have this phrase internally that we would talk to each other, say, hurt people, and every villain thinks they're the hero of their own story, and trying to give some nuance to some. And people aren't used, like I said, people aren't used to seeing French that way, so they're really shocked. Like this, I think there was a reviewer in Australia that said the last plot twist is that was in the credits when you see that was French Stewart, because but he just nailed it. And so I think Jim is a little more of a typical bad guy, for lack of a better, although French can give him a run for his money, but we tried to show that French's character had been hurt, and that he needed to go deal with that. Whereas I don't know what happened to Jim to make him who he is, but man, that's I'm just glad Kim got out of there. But even the flames, and there was so much, the flames on the car, and like just his costume, all the costumes. it's such an interesting thing to try to figure out because it's like the film is in this hermetically sealed environment, this hermetically sealed reality. And if you try to place it in a time, you kind of can't. You can be like, okay, well, these cars are 70s, these cars are 80s, these clothes are timeless. There's music from the 60s playing, but I love I love it and I never question it, even though and I'm trying to do similar things in some of my other stories where it's just another place and time, but it's every time and no time at this. But I were watching it, I was really thinking about that too, about how um it feels like this idea of this peaceful suburban like 1950s kind of, even though we know it wasn't peaceful, but this idea that it was, I know that, and that's a real neighborhood. Did you read that that was a real neighborhood? They
No,
they didn't build it. They shot in a real neighborhood.
I just
And
assumed it was like three
yeah,
different stages.
it was in Florida and they painted all the houses and like one of the owners wouldn't change their house and they finally got them to do it. But apparently it was really tough. But yeah, I just love this film so much. The heart in it and talk about Diane Wiest, like, oh
Yeah.
my God, she's incredible. She's absolutely incredible. To me, she plays so many people I grew up with. I grew up in Houston and I spent most of my childhood in Texas. And I felt like a lot of good-hearted people that I grew up with were trying to help people and not realizing that they weren't at all putting themselves in the other's point of view at all, or looking at where people came from. And even if they meant really well, it wasn't until after they had done some damage that they realized, oh, maybe I should have considered that. And I feel like she does kind of humanize that a little bit, with her speech to Winona Ryder when she says, I didn't think about, what it would do to him or what it would do to me. And then the line that really gets me is when she says, oh, maybe we should just go back to our life the way it was. Because he can't. So that's just this obliviousness and, misdirect, hell, what does it say? What's paved with a road to good
Oh,
intention?
Road to Hell,
Yeah,
paved it with good.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
But
oh, we
yeah,
met
no,
well. We met well. Let's just anyway, what's for dinner?
yeah, that horrible suggestion that's run because of the suburban setting where everything is like sort of beautifully manicured, even if Edward himself is doing the manicuring. It
Yeah.
is basically like, oh, this landscaper's not working out. Let's just send him away. There's
Yeah.
that awful sense that he is disposable at any given moment, except for
Yeah.
Kim,
Yeah.
and we haven't even mentioned. I mean, Johnny
Oh, no,
Depp,
right.
increasingly problematic presence,
Yeah.
but really good at this one thing, which
Mhm.
is confounding. It's like revisiting. I just rewatched Amadeus. Speaking of the Burton repertoire, and Jeffrey Jones is there, and he's great. And God damn it, right? Like you have to. I mean, that's adulthood. You can hold to very different opposing ideas in your head at any given time, which is one, this person is awful, but two, this movie is wonderful. Great art is made by bad people.
Yeah.
It happens all the time, but but you just like watching now, especially watching Depp and Ryder together, knowing that they had a relationship, knowing that it went terribly badly. Um, it's it's doubly melancholy because that apparently hasn't happened yet. Like this is that moment that captures the thing that could have been, even though they're acting, even though it's idealized, even though he has knives for hands. It's like there is something that Burton can catch in this moment of their connection and bring it into like these fiction or invest these fictional characters with it, and they're both doing magnificent work. Like the thing that I realized this time is that Ryder gets to have all the emotions. Kim gets to have all the emotions that Edward doesn't. And she
Yeah.
feels for him in the course of the movie. And it's perfect for Depp because he just has to stand there and absorb
Yeah.
without giving anything back, except that he does because his emotions are in his voice and he's feeling like the whole point of this is that Edward does have feelings, but he doesn't know how to express them until Kim helps him. And that to me now is just the satisfying thing
Yeah.
in this movie because it doesn't like that's not what happens. That's not what happened. But in the movie, like Burton creates this beautiful fantasy where you can believe it, where you can live in it if you want to, and then
Yeah.
end before anything bad can truly happen or anything awful can happen to Kim, and she gets to have her whole, Rose in Titanic life where there's been this whole life that's lived that we see at the very end. And and still this perfect relationship that lives forever in her memory. And that's the movie. Like that's what that movie is for me. We're watching her memory, obviously,
Yeah.
but it's heartbreaking.
It's so the end, oh my God. They say great love stories, they don't end up to rom-coms, they end up together, love stories, they don't.
Mm,
But yeah, I mean all of that. And even when looking at the way he views her, because I like to view stories from a feminine gaze, which to me is not objectifying. It doesn't mean it's not sexual or romantic, but it's looking at what are people thinking and feeling,
yeah.
not what do they look like. And I think that Edward's gaze I think it feels to me that it's a feminine gaze. I don't feel that he's ever, when he looks at Winona Ryder, doesn't mean he's not a man either, but he's seeing her. He's in awe of her. And it's not just because she's pretty. I think he really sees her. So the way that that's shot is really interesting. Every time he looks at her, I feel that it's paying attention to what is she thinking, what is she feeling, what are the, like you said, what are the emotions that she's feeling. Even when like I want to call him Biff, Jim. Even when at the shopping center when he like when Jim like picks her up or kisses her or whatever, it's like, oh, what is there's a curiosity like and an awe of what is she thinking and feeling and what is that and the fact that he doesn't know what to do when Joyce seduces him. He's not just like, oh, pretty women, I'm just gonna go crazy. And so I never really thought about what you just said about that he's gets to experience through her, but that makes a lot of sense. And I just appreciated the way. And then the interesting thing is, I think that she actually doesn't. I think that she doesn't have a feminine gaze on him until um, they come back from that his arrest. He comes back from his arrest and she says, "Are you okay?" Or did they hurt you or something like that? And all of a sudden, the way we feel from her perspective has shifted, and even the way it's shot, it's more equal and balanced, and there's reciprocity there for sure after that. So it took him kind of going out on a limb and her for her to see that he's human and that he can get hurt, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a delicate creation, the film itself,
Yeah.
with just that mood that tells us the score tells us how to feel, but it doesn't really,
Yeah.
because Danny Elfman is too smart for that, because Tim Burton is too smart for that. Like
Yeah.
this is just oh, he had a run. Yeah, like the two of them together
Yeah.
just had this incredible run. I don't think people understand how fully, especially Elfman, but what Burton unleashed in Elfman and allowed him to do with Beetlejuice specifically, and I guess with Pee Wee, but mostly Beetlejuice, where that kind of frenzied orchestral thing that became Elfman's brand
Yeah.
was really empowered. And Elfman, like just by scoring The Simpsons, if nothing else, by writing that theme song, has had an impact on like developing brains because kids watch The Simpsons too young
Yeah.
and expect this. But when I was seeing these things for the first time, there was nothing like them. I mean, Oingo Boingo was a great band, but they didn't do what Elfman does for music, for film.
Mhm.
And then to slow it down and be lyrical in Edward Scissorhands the way that he does, and have choral pieces and movements and just there is room for frenzy, but that's not what this movie is about. And to do that and then create this fairy tale that also kids would see too young, way too young,
Yeah.
for decades is so odd and powerful and influential. And that mixture, that alchemy of the two of them working together creatively has like I think will be seen as one of the great collaborations, just because you get Nightmare Before Christmas and you get all the other things that people see, that people receive at a young age, and then just sort of assume that this is the way the world works, and then gradually you look back and it's like, oh no, art is like, this kind of art is really unique and not everybody can do it as well, and most people shouldn't even attempt it.
Yeah, absolutely. The ice dance is still one of my probably possibly my favorite cue of all time, but definitely in the top three. But yeah, absolutely. The thing, sometimes there'll be quiet moments in quiet visual moments that you hear Danny's drums, and you're like, oh wow, okay, we're gonna go there now, okay, but then it's not a lot. It's just a hint of what's to come later in his career, and then they'll have like big moments that are scored with emotional quiet thing, and it's just so genius. They really are in the emotions. And did you know this was originally the first draft was supposed to be a musical?
I'd
of every,
heard this, but it never
yeah.
makes sense to me. I mean, I
It
get it.
doesn't, I
And
don't even
obviously,
understand. Yeah. Did they break the fourth wall? Like, I don't know what does that even, what does a musical version of Edward Scissorhands look like? I have no idea.
yeah. Well, from my perspective, it would have to be something like the way they use Rocky in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like he'd
Yeah.
have one song and he wouldn't be understood because Edward, like, why would Edward sing? Unless the whole point of it is that he was designed to have music in his heart,
Yeah.
but doesn't understand it.
But then it would be
Maybe,
understood. So it wouldn't work.
right, exactly. Or he could, I mean, okay, maybe now this is where I get weird. Maybe, I mean, if everyone else sings original songs and Edward only sings covers, like without fully understanding them,
He's trying to be human. Yeah, he's trying to show.
yeah, but it's just, why would you do that? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't work. I mean, it maybe
No.
if you're seeing it as sort of a Disney fairy tale right at the time when all the Disney songs, you know, like
Yeah.
those like the selling points, because Musker and Clements leaned on Ashman and Menken for Little Mermaid and decided to style it like a Broadway production, and that's where Disney had been going for a couple of years. Maybe I could sort of understand the impulse, but it makes no like emotional or logical sense to me.
Yeah, I don't. And because the other thing is hearing if it's him that sings, which I would imagine it, unless it's like a chorus of I don't even know. But then the fact that he hardly speaks in this movie is part of what's so beautiful about it. Like everybody's projecting onto him because and he's learning to speak. He's learning his feelings. You hang on every word because he hardly speaks. So and everything is intentional. So I really don't know. I really don't know what that would look like. Maybe, I mean, I guess they put it aside and brought it out for Nightmare Before Christmas, but
Yeah,
uh,
that would make sense.
yeah.
Like, no, we'll splinter it off and do something else, because that also
Yeah.
is so clearly like Tim Burton's sketchbook brought to life
Yeah.
by Henry Selick, who's an absolute master. But here, working in live action, you create more limitations, right? Like even after Batman, he was still working with practical. Like there's no CG in this; it's just not here yet.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that's so beautiful. Like that hair had to be styled by human hands every time. That everybody had to build this world and find a place where, yeah, Diane Wiest and Alan Arkin, who again, just, you know, like the perfect casting for someone who can suggest a normal suburban person or someone desperately trying to look like a normal suburban person who is in fact Alan Arkin, just like ready to go nuts at any given moment.
Oh my God, he plays like the perfect oblivious but caring dad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's he's so often getting it wrong, but you love him for trying. But you're just like, oh, here he goes again. And there, Edward walks off totally upset, and then they're like, where did he go? He's like, he just walked off. Like, he has no clue that, just giving all this advice without, just, I think we all know someone like that. But, yeah. And so one thing I found interesting too is they said like there were all these mistakes in the film, but I don't think like they said I was reading about it and they said I can't remember where it was, but it said, oh, that the sculptures are bigger than the hedges. I'm like, yeah, because it's magic. They're supposed to be bigger. We're supposed to be in awe. Like they're supposed to be huge. He's magical, you know? And oh, or the dog after the haircut changes breeds. And I'm like, yeah, that's he's magic. You know, these are not mistakes.
No,
I
I agree. I do this whole plot hole slash I don't like this, therefore it's wrong culture of
yeah,
film watching is just exhausting to me.
yeah, me
Um,
too.
it's of course it's not a real, like, this is not a real story.
Oh, and yeah, it just I want to see things through his point of view. I want to see more snow than is possible for the amount that he's cutting the ice, you know. I want to see more hair everywhere. You know, it's magical realism. It's incredible. So
Yeah,
I
we're
love
watching
it.
a memory. Kim is telling
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
story.
Cut us some slack.
People are the worst. Yeah. This is the bit where I pivot and try to find a connection between Edward Scissorhands and Bob Trevino Likes It. Although I
Oh,
guess
okay.
we already have, right? Like it is about people finding support and connection uh, without wanting something from the other. Like that
Yeah.
the thing that happens between Kim and Edward, the love that forms is like it is a fairy tale kind of love, right? Like it's the thing where maybe they're never going to touch beyond a hug. Maybe this isn't carnal. Like it's just a meeting of souls. And in like through that, we discover that Edward has one, which I think is the best thing. Like that's that's where he is a person,
Yeah.
in the heart, even though he couldn't express any of it until he got there. And this beautiful, perfect, impossible romance. What happens in Bob Trevino isn't a romance, but it is a meeting of minds in a way that each person desperately needs. It's two people who are, you can say broken or hurt, certainly scarred, but I think the whole point of your movie, if I can just dictate this to you, is that they're not broken or hurt. I mean, they're
Yeah.
bruised, but they're not broken because look what's possible. Like that's
Yeah.
what the movie is about, and obviously this is based on a true. I don't know how to define it. Based on actual events, based on a true story, based on your own. How would you define it?
We've been saying inspired by a true friendship because I did fictionalize a lot of it, but my emotional truth is definitely in the story, and a
Mm.
very similar situation did happen to me where I was looking for my dad online. He wouldn't call me back, wouldn't email me back, and I put his name into Facebook and friended another man with his name who ended up being more paternal and kinder to me than I had experienced with my father at that time. So I ha found out healing through the stranger on the internet, and that kindness changed my life. And so I felt I have to, I owe it to the world to share that so we can all know that these kind of things matter, these little things matter, that the ripple effect of that kindness. And so I think for me, a similar thing is that these are, both with Bob and Lily, John Leguizamo's character and Barbie Ferrer's character and Bob Trevino Likes It. They're both kind of just going through life and not, it's kind of mundane, and they're not really being treasured or seen by anybody, because everybody's hurting and everybody in their life is dealing with stuff. And so they 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 see each other. They hold space for where they're at. They see each other and they celebrate these small connections, and they really celebrate them. And so I think what might be similar in Edward Scissorhands is that he's, here at the end, here are two people that whose lives are forever altered because they happen to have occupied the same space and allowed each other space to they're both, she's imperfect, she's going along with Jem, she's doing all this stuff, but he holds space for her and she changes, so she grows and heals and changes as well, even if we don't see all of that. So I think the magic, I think it is pure magic, whether you're meeting someone on the internet and they're changing your life forever, or whether you're meeting a man with scissors for hands that lives in a castle, whoever you're meeting, there can be magic in this connection when we just see each other for who we are, and allow space for that.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful realization of the mundane too. Like
Yeah.
you can see the proceeds. You can see, you can hold a dog and know that, for this moment everything is okay,
Yeah.
which just such a beautiful scene. And we're allowed to see. I think the other thing you do, which is really, it got some credit. Obviously, audience awards, people are picking up on it, but you're giving these actors a showcase to do something that, like, I have not seen John Leguizamo play an ordinary person, and he's beautiful at it. Like he's just so good at it, and it's that character actor thing where, people expect a certain thing from French Stewart, and you don't give them that. You give him an opportunity to do something he's never done before, and people. I think the fascinating thing about Leguizamo's career, this came up when we were talking about Carlito's Way a few years back. It's just like, this is not an actor who has ever been ordinary. Like his energy has always read weird. The camera loves him, and you want to push in on him and see more to him. But to give him stillness and not have him play like a calculating villain, which he's done 5 or 6 times,
Yeah.
to let him just like to let us to find something interesting about him that is just him
Yeah.
is such a remarkable gift,
Yeah.
that your film gives him, because there's just those scenes where he's at his desk looking at telescopes on the internet, and it's just the most interesting thing in the world, because I want to know why he's doing that. What does it mean to this person who's just sitting there looking at the internet, and just pulls us in?
Yeah, absolutely. He's an interesting good guy. He's not a saint. And the other thing that I really wanted with everybody in this film is, we know people like Bob and we know people like Lily, who, but like Bob, who maybe go to work, come home, and we never realize how incredible they are, or Lily, who might kind of try to disappear, take care of other people, and or even, Jeannie, who you might think, oh, she's like a Karen Light, oh, whatever. She's not. No, she's a grieving mom, or Daphne, or the dad, like all of them. So they gave, again, once again, like going to this magic in the everyday life, like the magic that is Bob Trevino as he sits at his desk, like who is this like you said, who is this person? And now the next time I see anybody like that, could they be the most magical, amazing person in the whole world? They just might, they just might be. So going a little further, seeing and Barbie Ferreira is just phenomenal and so different from her role in Euphoria here. So I'm really excited for her to get her flowers for this, whatever that means, just people to see how much she has to offer too. So
yeah, no, I'm so glad it's out in the world. It's about to be out in the world, and I'm so glad people are going to see it.
It's so soon now.
Yeah, how does it feel? Like South by was a year ago.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been working on it since I started writing it like almost 4 years ago, and which is pretty fast, I guess, for a lot of films. But yeah, it's strange. It feels like I'm both giving birth and sending my kid off to college in the same day. And I don't know how I feel about it, but I know I've done all I can do, and I just hope for the best. Send them on their way, and hope that I've raised them right, and that the world that they'll be have positive impact on the world. So and the people are like, what's next? That's the thing now, and so I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like you get empty nest syndrome. You're like, I better focus on what's next. So I'm working on. I better have another kid now.
Scissors for hands.
Yeah. Can we make a sequel? There can be no sequel. No. But we'll see. But I am developing something that has this kind of feel, and I think that's another reason I was drawn to this. Is just we'll see if I'm able to get it going. But I think we need playful, fantastic films that are human and full of heart like this, and that's definitely one of my goals. So.
My thanks to Tracie Laymon, whose new film Bob Trevino Likes It is now playing in theaters across North America and really benefits from being seen with a room full of strangers. Go be one of them. Thanks also to Winnie Wong. She knows what she did. You can find Tracie on Instagram at Tracie Laymon Films, all one word, and you can find Edward Scissorhands on Blu-ray and DVD from 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment. It's also streaming on Disney Plus in North America and on Crave in Canada as well. It's also available to rent or buy on various VOD services. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 41 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get the new booster as soon as you can. I'll see you next week.